You were scrolling down memory lane when you accidentally tapped your ex's post from years ago. Better delete the whole app. When scrolling's a bust, tacos are a must. Paso, the old El Paso.
Pick up an old El Paso stand and stuffed taco kit today.
When modern life gets rough, grab the timeless taste you love. Paso, the old El Paso.
They say to only bring what you can carry. So with the all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor, bring a lot. Like 3 dirt bikes, a few tents, an entire crew ready to make memories. A panoramic 24-inch display, and the confidence to push your limits. The all-new 2025 Ford Expedition Tremor.
Always consult the owner's manual before off-road driving. Know your terrain and trail difficulty and use appropriate safety gear. Max payload varies based on accessories and vehicle configuration. See label on door jamb for carrying capacity of a specific vehicle. Always properly secure cargo.
Hello everyone, this is Fortune's Wheel, and I'm your host Jonathan, and today we're continuing our second Patreon series supporting what's happening on the public podcast. This series is called Context of a Conquest. On the public podcast, we're taking a deep dive into the Norman conquest of England, but here on Patreon we're asking a few extra questions about it. While the English are undergoing massive cultural, political, religious, and economic transformation, what are Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and other areas directly or indirectly impacted by Duke William's conquest doing? We know the implications of the conquest stretch far, far beyond England eventually, and we want to try to accurately set up these other areas with the context needed to fully grasp what occurred across the Isles in the late 11th and into the 12th century. Today, specifically, we get a little personal, diving into William and Matilda's marriage and asking a serious question, one that has endured through the last 10 centuries. Was Matilda a jealous wife driven mad with envy? And if so, what exactly would have made her jealous? I want to sincerely thank all of you who are listening to this, as you've generously donated to the production of this podcast and shown that you believe in what's happening here. There are no words for my appreciation, so I'll simply offer another heartfelt thank you. So, back to our second members-only series. This is episode 12, entitled, Was Matilda Really a Monster? Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show. William was cheating on her. I mean, he had to be, right? He was powerful, influential, wealthy beyond belief. He was a freaking king. But Matilda was sure that the rumors of him cheating were true. Once renowned for her unmatched beauty, she, like her husband, was no spring chicken anymore. She had bore William more than a handful of children by 1070, but she had also reached the point every woman must come to grips with, assuming she survived her childhood rearing days, that is. Most women, sadly, did not. But Matilda, as we know, was not most women. She was made of hardier stuff, physically as well as mentally. She survived those years for reasons beyond mere luck. If it wasn't ambition, maybe she was driven by spite. I say this only half-jokingly. As ambitious as William was, she was certainly his equal in those regards. As far as Matilda was concerned, bearing her noble husband heirs was only half her job. Matilda married William because she felt he would afford her opportunities that she had been groomed for since her birth. She wanted power. And power she got, by the way. Not only was she a duchess of a major principality in France, but she also became a queen of a foreign kingdom. And while William was putting down rebellion after rebellion, she was, more or less, put in charge of Normandy. Sure, she was really given the power to advise her eldest son, Robert, and sure, William's bro from long before, William Fitzosborne, was there to advise as well. But make no mistake, according to the records, it was Matilda who was calling the shots, especially after the falling out between William and Robert. See our next Patreon members only episode 13 for that story. In her years serving her own interests while simultaneously serving her husband's interests, Matilda had become, well, a serious boss. Though she was always known for her political acumen and force of personality, over the years she'd become known for something else too. How should I put this? She could make things happen. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. She could make things happen. She was always known for her clarity of purpose, but she also became known for her ability to sway people to see her side of things. For instance, due to her well-known devoutness, she made friends with a number of high-ranking clergy in and around Normandy. And I'm not saying she did things, but because of the connections she made while William was away in Brittany and England throughout the 1060s, she was able to weather the rumor storm of her possible infidelity with both Earl Harold Godwinson and William Fitzosborne. No one gave it much thought because of what Matilda had groomed her reputation to be. She must have known very well the idea that cultivating a certain reputation could help a person to maintain just about any controversy. But William, on the other hand, the records hint that her looks were fading by the 1070s. Slowly, but fading nonetheless, by the time England settled down in those early years of the 1070s. However, she had aged well. More importantly, she had earned her husband's respect over the decades, which, contrary to popular opinion, that is far more important to a man than modern society would have you believe. But, William was like a man of extremely high value by the early 1070s. He was a medieval top G, He could have whatever and whoever he chose. Why wouldn't these rumors be true? It was a perfect storm for Matilda and William. One, for reasons will be pointed out in the Patreon episode mentioned earlier, Patreon episode 13 coming up next. Robert, her favorite child, according to the records, by the early 1070s, was not exactly on good terms with William at the moment. Remember, Robert was given the county of Maine, but lost it to Hugh V a few short years later. A father like William would not have accepted that too kindly. 2. William had been absent from Normandy more than he had been present over the previous 5 or 6 years. Though absence makes the heart grow fonder, too much absence breeds, obviously, a lack of connection and communication and understanding. And in a marriage, that's all amplified. And Matilda, number 3, may have been feeling that, or what we all feel when we reach a certain age, men and women alike. Am I still what my partner wants after all these years? We all feel it. And I don't think it's a sign of weakness either. Maybe a little insecurity, but come on, insecurity is part and parcel for being involved with someone else, especially romantically. The way I see it, if a person isn't even a little insecure from time to time, I kind of question how much he or she cares. Now, the records indicate that Matilda became insanely jealous about a couple of incidents. Now, do you remember Thomas of Bayeux, mentioned in the last episode? This is the guy, a one-time student of Lanfranc's, who took over as Bishop of York just before the ascension of Lanfranc to the Archbishopric of Canterbury. Now, Thomas of Bayeux, or Bishop Thomas of York, subsequently declared Durham as the sole manager of the Northumbrian faith in direct opposition of Archbishop Lanfranc. Yeah, so that guy. See, it was widely rumored that Thomas of Bayeux only received that job because, get this, he was William's illegitimate son. Not much is known of Thomas of Bayeux's origins, but he appears as Lanfranc's student and then promoted to Bishop of York, William's troubled far northern reaches of his new kingdom. In her book, Queen of the Conqueror, The Life of Matilda, Wife of William I, Tracy Borman writes that this story comes from local tradition, but has no basis in fact. She says, quote, Thomas of Bayeux was of the right age to have been William's son and was close enough to him to write the epitaph for William's tomb. but there's nothing to support the theory, end quote. There is another one too, but it has equal merit, as in no merit at all. His name was William Peverell. He was mentioned in the Doomsday Book, but the story is so short it's not worth getting into. Essentially, 1,000 years ago, there's absolutely zero evidence of any infidelity on William's part. I'd venture to say if we're going off on fringe conspiracy theories, it's far more believable, given the details in the records, that Matilda was more likely to have had the affair in the marriage, if ever one was had. There is even a story about word reaching Matilda's ears about William, back in England, was meeting 2 young runaway nuns in the forest every morning for days, but what didn't make it back to her was that William's conscience forbade him to act on any possible lustful thoughts. In fact, in the end, not only did he assist the girls in escaping their nunnery, but he also found them husbands. It's important to mention that this story was written as late as the 1700s, so yeah, you got to take that into consideration as well. Either way, the story goes that the girls were married off, but both died mysteriously within a year of their weddings. Borman writes, quote, "Upon hearing this, the Duke immediately suspected that his wife had ordered their deaths, and as punishment, he had her dragged through the streets of Caen by the tail of a horse." End quote. It certainly lends itself to William's short temper and violent nature, even when directed at his wife. Don't forget the story of him beating the crap out of her back in Flanders when she declined his initial offer of marriage. However, by the early 1070s, if not sooner, Matilda had firmly established herself as the absolute perfect marriage partner for William. There were just no questions about that. William admired strength in all its forms. Matilda, she had those in spades. So no, this 18th century tale is just that. A tale. Borman writes of another rumor or two. She writes, quote, "Rather more intriguing is a persistent rumor that resulted from malicious gossip by the wife of Hugh de Grantmesnil." I probably butchered that name as well. Hugh was an influential Norman nobleman whom William had appointed governor of Winchester. This lady had, quote, "conceived a particular ill will against her sovereign," end quote. So says Orderic Vitalis, and therefore determined to cause trouble for him in Normandy. She began by circulating reports among the wives of absent Norman nobles that their husbands were being unfaithful during their long sojourns in England. This caused such a furor that many of the husbands in question were obliged to return home and defend themselves, thus creating a void in the government of England. End Borman's quote.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
It's back to school season, and Clorox is donating 2 million disinfecting wipes to classrooms across America. Because back to school means things can get a little bit messy. Just ask second grade teacher Mr. Torres.
Put me and just one Clorox wipe on a team? We can take on crayon smudges, sticky fingerprints on every surface, sneezes on the door handle, juice box explosion by the sink, snack crumbs, and don't even get me started on the bathroom passes.
Clorox disinfecting wipes. Teacher's #1 wipe.
Think about it. Bathroom passes.
Clean feels good. Based on unit sales data.
Borman continues, though, quote, "Lady de Grantmesnil then turned on William directly, claiming that the king had tried to seduce her. This story was seized upon by Githa, mother of the late King Harold, who then sent word of it to the King of Denmark, but not before she had added an embellishment of her own. According to her versions of events, William also tried to seduce the daughter of one of the canons of Canterbury Cathedral. The young girl in question was the niece of a Kentish nobleman named Marlswain, who joined a rebellion, possibly the Kent Rebellion of 1067, against the king upon hearing of it." End quote. Now, many of these rumors made it to William of Malmesbury in the 12th century. Not a one of them has any serious substantiation, and William of Malmesbury covers himself by admitting as much. But his inclusion of them leads one to believe that they were quite well known and circulated well into the next century. Now, I want to hang on to this story of Merylswyn's 16-year-old daughter for just a bit longer, as it says a lot more about our quote-unquote trusted chroniclers than it does about Matilda and William. See, Matilda is said to have ordered the girl to be hamstrung. Now, we've heard of this term, I'm sure, hamstrung, in our daily language. It's a metaphor that basically means to keep one from doing something freely. That's probably a good definition of hamstrung. However, there's a seriously dark and twisted background to this term. In the medieval torture kind of way, to hamstring someone is to literally cripple them by cutting the tendons that connect the hamstrings to the knee joint, as well as to the hip joint. It's an age-old, well, even mentioned in the book of Joshua in the Bible, way of torturing or punishing someone. Such an injury can certainly heal, but 1,000 years ago, I'm not so sure they'd be running any 5Ks ever again. Now, pertaining to our poor young victim here, Borman states, quote, "The tortures that Matilda was said to have inflicted upon the poor girl grew more grisly with time. A later history of William's reign claimed that she had ordered her jaws to be slit. This scandalous story was in turn surpassed by the 13th century chronicler, Robert of Gloucester, who told how, quote, the priest's daughter was privily slain by a confidential servant of Matilda the Queen, end quote. To such rumors is added the even more outlandish claim that, quote, the Conqueror was so enraged at the barbarous revenge taken by his consort that on his return to Normandy he beat her with his bridle so severely that she soon after died. End all quotes, including Borman's. Yeah, William was so mad he beat his wife until she died from her injuries. See, it's a lesson in not believing everything you read on the medieval internet, that's for sure. Matilda died years later, and it had nothing to do with any beating she suffered at the hands of her husband, who, by all legitimate accounts, is said to have lived faithfully and loved her immensely. Now, Borman then reminds us of Matilda's later treatment of Britrick. Remember that poor guy? He's the Saxon who became a staple in her father's court, possibly hooked up with her. She fell madly in love with him, and then he turned her bold offer of marriage down, publicly humiliating her. Don't forget that once her husband became king, she exacted her revenge on Britrick. Now, at the end of the day, we must look at William and Matilda's marriage through the lenses of their contemporaries. There will always be propaganda. That's a sad but inevitable fact of studying history. But the closer to the source our stories are written thousands of years ago, the more weight they tend to hold. Borman says, quote, none of the contemporary records mention either's infidelity. Indeed, they consistently praise William's fidelity. End quote, excuse me. Now, I would agree. When it comes to these two people who were arguably at the height of 11th century royalty, anywhere really. I mean, even today, whenever someone is at the pinnacle of success or influence, someone is looking to tear them down. And no matter how many chroniclers you may have, there's always someone waiting in the wings to take you out. And yet, record after record shows no sign of true infidelity. Okay. Let's pretend that William did commit adultery. Just pretend here. She makes a good point. She says, quote, even if the king had forsaken his marriage vows, it is unlikely that a woman of Matilda's dignity and restraint would so far forget herself as to murder a mistress. End quote. Now pick any of these stories and you'll see Matilda coming out the monster. She's depicted as, in Borman's words, a quote-unquote ruthless, vengeful queen capable of inflicting untold cruelty upon anyone who crossed her. Now, was Matilda the monster she's made out to be, though? Certainly not. But I'll leave you on one of Borman's ideas. Quote, It is possible that the chroniclers may have used these stories as a device to portray a darker side to her character, end quote. Now, dare I say, a darker side that may have actually existed, but was deliberately left out of the earliest chronicles for propagandist purposes. She may not have been a murderer, but was Matilda still capable of a darker side? A woman scorned is no trivial thing, and a woman of great power and influence, at a time when such a woman was an absolute rarity, only emphasized the expanding ripples of such scorn. But more than anything, I'm left with another question. What would the benefit be for 11th century chroniclers to demonize William's powerful wife? And I'll leave you on that note. Thank you for listening. Until next time.